All right, this is going to be my UFL playoff preview here, as well as my power rankings for the end of the season, end of the regular season at least. So let's get started here. Number 8 is going to be the Houston Roughnecks. They're 1-9, had the worst record in the league. Um, and with the way the UFL set up, they don't even get the number one pick, even after having the worst record. So a little disappointing of a season here for Houston. They played the Showboats this week and lost 19-12, and that was the game that would have decided who gets the number one pick. The winner got the number one pick, and the loser, now has the number two pick. So yeah, not a good season here at all for Houston Roughnecks. Nolan Henderson in this game had 232 yards, 43 rushing yards. He was solid. Kirk Merritt had 99 yards and a touchdown. Justin Hall had 8 receptions and 70 yards. He was pretty good. Um, they were down by 7 with 6 minutes left, and then they had a chance to go, tie the game towards the end of it, but they ended up turning it over on downs. So not the best game here for Houston, but yeah, as a whole this season, very, very disappointing here for the Houston Roughnecks. I thought they were going to be better than 1-9. I didn't expect them to be good. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs, but I thought they would at least probably win like 3 or 4 games to be at least respectable. But yeah, they think they've definitely been the worst team in this UFL by far. Number 7 is going to be the Memphis Showboats here, 2-8. Just beat the Houston Roughnecks here, 19-12. Like I just talked about earlier, they do now have the number one pick this year because the winner of that game was granted the number one pick. So going forward for next season, Memphis will have the number one pick in each round of the UFL draft, which, I don't really know how valuable the number one pick, this number two pick would be for the UFL, but certainly would help them at least a little bit. So that's good there for Memphis. But in this game specifically, Josh Love got his first start this season. He was not great. 152 yards and 1 interception to 0 touchdowns. Not the best performance, but not horrible. Darius Victor was really good with 63 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Adams had 6 receptions for 59 yards. They were doing really, really good. They scored a go-ahead touchdown with a little over 6 minutes left. Then they were able to stop the Houston Roughnecks. So really good performance down the stretch here for Memphis. And overall, this season for Memphis, definitely been a little bit underwhelming. They have a lot of injuries here. Case Cookus, certainly would have been their best quarterback, but he did not be able to play all season long, which has kind of been a common theme for him. He's never played a whole season, I believe, since the USFL started back up in 2022. I think he's played, every single year since then in one of these leagues, and he's never played a full season. So it's definitely disappointing because he's been a really good quarterback. But yeah, having to go from Case Cookus down to Troy Williams, down again to Josh Love, not ideal, but not a horrible season for Memphis, but definitely not a great one either. Number 6 is the DC Defenders, who are 4-6. They lost this week 32-31 versus the Arlington Renegades. Jordan Teami was pretty good, 18-34, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns. Vincent Smith had 43 yards and a touchdown. Brandon Smith had 51 yards and a touchdown. So they had really, really good offense all the game. This game was kind of back and forth. They were all scoring, a bunch of points basically throughout the entirety of the game. But the defenders let up a touchdown and a 1-point conversion with 2 minutes and 28 seconds to end up going down by 1. And they had a chance down by 1 with 2.5 minutes left and ended up turning it over on down. So we're not able to get anything going for their offense in that last drive. So not ideal there for DC. Now looking at DC's season as a whole, they've had a few close games that they have lost. So their 4-6 record isn't that bad of a record, and they're only, it would have been a long shot for them to be able to make the playoffs anyways because San Antonio and St. Louis both have 7 wins, but DC's had their fair share of injury troubles as well. Abram Smith was supposed to be their lead back coming into the year, and he's probably best running back in the entire league if he was playing. So that definitely, him being injured for the entire season definitely made a big impact on the DC Defenders season as a whole. But yeah, Other than that, I mean, Jordan Diamu has been still really good, but he's been a little bit worse than I expected him to be coming into this season. But yeah, not a horrible season here for DC, but definitely not a good one. Given that they went to the XFL Championship last season, they would have had a lot more title hopes here coming into this year. Number 5 is going to be the Arlington Renegades. They're 3-7, beat the DC Defenders 32-31 this week. Louis Perez was amazing in this game. 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions as well, so that's not great. Um, Davion Smith had 111 total yards. Tyler Vaughn had 5 receptions for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sal Canella, 7 receptions for 52 yards. Their offense was amazing. Them in DC were just battling it out every single possession. It seemed like everyone scored almost. So definitely a fun game to watch. Potentially the most fun game of the week to watch. I mean, all these games were one-score games. 3 of them were only 1-point games, but this was the highest scoring game, which by default kind of makes it more entertaining. But yeah, certainly a great game here for Arlington and a good win to close out the season. And Arlington's won, I believe, 3 of their last 4 games. I believe they were 0-6, and then won 3 of their last 4 games to get a respectable record of 3-7. So yeah, looking at Arlington's season as a whole, again, 3-7, not a good record considering they did win the XFL championship last year. So there would have been higher expectations for them to perform a lot better than they have this season. But a lot of their games have been one possession. I believe at least 3 of their games, maybe 4, have all been one possession games that they lost. So just a little bit of a difference here and there could very easily make this a 6 or 7 win team and potentially in that XFL conference championship game. But even then, they only won 4 games last year, and then were able to make the playoffs and go on to win the XFL championship last season. So 3-7 records, only 1 game worse than what they were last year, and last year they were still viable for an XFL championship. So I definitely think this team could have been an XFL contender, but their running game was not good for the majority of the season. Their offensive line was not good for basically the entire season, and their defense was not very good the entire season. Louis Perez kind of carried the offense and willed them to a couple wins, but their defense and offensive line was not good enough to help them contend for a playoff spot. Number 4 here is going to be the Michigan Panthers, who are 7-3. They lost this week 20-19 versus the Birmingham Stallions. Danny Etling was pretty good, 195 yards, 1 touchdown, 36 rushing yards, and another rushing touchdown as well. COC Mariner had 7 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. Really great game for Mariner there. They did let up a touchdown with only 59 seconds left to end up going down by 1 point, 20-19. Not ideal there. And then Jake Bates still had an opportunity to make a 53-yard game-winning field goal, which usually is something that Jake Bates would make. He has, I believe, 2 game winners this season already. One of them was 64 yards away. He's made multiple 60-plus yard field goals this season, so you would expect him to be able to nail this 53-yarder with ease, but he ended up missing it. So, I mean, it's not horrible. Missing his 53-yard game-winning field goal is definitely hurts, but it wouldn't have made a whole difference. It would not make a huge difference for the USFL Conference Championship anyways, because no matter what, if they would have won that game by 2 points, Birmingham still would have been hosting the USFL Conference Championship game, so it doesn't make a huge difference. It would have just been a nice little momentum boost going into next week. But nonetheless, Michigan played a really solid game, and looking at the season as a whole, Michigan has been certainly a surprise in my eyes. I did not expect them to be one of the better teams in the league making the playoffs. I definitely would have expected them to probably, maybe like 4 or 5 games and still be contending for a playoff spot, but not necessarily be up here at 7 wins and actually look like they have a legit shot of being able to make it to the UFL championship game. Number 3 is going to be the San Antonio Brahmas, who are 7-3. They lost this week 13-12 versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. That was definitely not the most entertaining game. Both offenses were pretty bad, only scoring 25 combined points this week. But both defenses were still doing really, really good. It's not just that both offenses were completely horrible. Both defenses were just like really, really good and made the offenses look, a little bit worse than what they, I feel like, actually are. That's going to be a good preview going into next week. But yeah, for the Brahmas this week, Dormady was playing most of the game. He had 188 yards and a touchdown. Garbers had 40 yards and an interception before he got injured. Morgan Ellison is pretty good, 43 yards, a touchdown. He also had a fumble, though. Jontre Kirkland was amazing with 7 receptions, 127 yards, and 1 touchdown. Um, Battlehawks were up 10-0 at halftime, and the Brahmas made it a lot closer. Made it only 13-12 here towards the end of the game. Um, they had a chance to make a 2-point conversion to take the lead here with only a couple minutes left in the game. Um, there was they converted it originally, but there was a penalty. Had an ineligible man downfield, and then they ended up missing it the second time, which led St. Louis to be up by 1 point. But San Antonio still had a shot to hit a game-winning field goal, which was only, let's see, what did I write down? It was only a 51-yard field goal by Ryan Santoso. He should have been able to make it, but I do believe it was actually tipped by St. Louis, and St. Louis was then able to win the game and steal home field advantage. But yeah, this was a really good game, and for San Antonio this season, they've definitely been a really, really good team. I expected them to make the XFL playoffs, XFL Conference Championship game here. Definitely would be better if Chase Garbers has been playing all season long, but you can't really get much better than 7-3 record. So, uh, and their other quarterbacks haven't been bad. Or just that Chase Garbers, I think, is certainly better than Dormady. Um, and it's going to be interesting to see if Garbers is able to play here in the XFL title game. Number 2 is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks, who are 7-3. They just beat the Brahmas 13-12. Like I just said, I'm not going to go over their game scenario again. They were down. They were up 10-0 at halftime, up 13-12. Stopped the 2-point conversion after the penalty, and then able to, tip that game-winning field goal attempt. So really good game here for St. Louis defensively. Offensively, not so much. A.J. McCarron was 10-24 for 115 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Definitely his worst game of the season, but he also hadn't played in 3 weeks, so kind of knocked some rust off here. Jacob Sailors had 57 yards. He was pretty solid, but not the best offensive performance here for St. Louis, but, San Antonio wasn't much better either on the offensive end. So definitely going into this title game, it should be a very fun matchup. And coming in here at number 1, obviously, is going to be the Birmingham Stallions. They're 9-1. Um, Adrian Martinez has been amazing all season long. This game was definitely his worst game of the season. 163 yards and a touchdown, 41 rushing yards, only 14-28 passing. Not great here, but they got a 1-point win versus the Michigan Panthers. Really all they needed. The running game was really good. TJ Marable, 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jay Sternberger had 53 yards and a touchdown as well. And then we had a go-ahead touchdown with only 59 seconds left, and we're able to stop Michigan, hold them to a game-winning field goal attempt that they ended up missing. So, yeah, really good season here for Birmingham. Actually didn't talk about St. Louis's season, but St. Louis for this season basically went about how I expected. I expected them to be the best team in the XFL conference, and that's definitely how they've been, so far this season. But, yeah, Birmingham, again, I expected them to be the best team in the league by far because that's how they've been showing the last couple of years in the USFL, just pure dominance. So it does not surprise me that they are 9-1 here. They have had a couple close games that they got away with there, so they very easily could be 7-3 or so right now, which is still a really good record. But yeah, really good season here for Birmingham. Next up here is going to be our standings. So Battlehawks 1, Brahmas 2, Defenders 3, Renegades 4. In the USFL, you got Stallions 1, Panthers 2, Showboats 3, and Roughnecks 4. Looking at the attendance this week, Panthers and Stallions only had 7,000 people. A little bit disappointing, but then again, it wasn't even a game that really had any sort of stakes. So that's probably a lot of the reason why, because they're going to play in the playoffs here this upcoming weekend. and it's going to be the exact same two teams. So maybe you don't want to spend your money to go to a team to go to the pointless game in week 10. Just save your money to go to the actual playoff game. Brahmas and Battlehawks at over 34,000. They're going to fill. They always fill it up. I think they're going to have over 40,000 here for their first playoff game in St. Louis. So that's going to be a lot of people there. Renegade and DC Defenders, a little over 13,000. Pretty good game there. A good performance there for DC's final game of the season. And Roughnecks and Showboats had a little over 6,000. Pretty disappointing. I would expect Memphis to get a little bit more than that for their final game of the season, but obviously nobody's really interested in watching this game, which can't really blame them, but would like to see that number a little bit higher. But yeah, that gives us an average here a little over 15,000 when last week's average was only about 8,000. So really good numbers there compared to last week, but most of that is because of St. Louis. Look at that, our TV viewership. Panthers and Stallions had 753,000 there on ESPN. Brahmas and Battlehawks at 836,000 on Fox. Renegades and Defenders, 893,000 on ABC. And then Roughnecks and Showboats, 649,000 on Fox. So about 780,000 on average, which is solid. Down a lot from last week at 950,000, but then again, two of these games, I mean, basically all of these games were completely pointless. Two of them were just previews of next week's game. The Brahmas and Battlehawks was certainly important for seeding, but the average viewer is not going to care because it's going to be the same matchup anyways. Renegades Defenders was not important at all, and Roughnecks and Showboats was only important to see who got the number one pick, which the average viewer is probably not going to care about. So it makes sense that this was a less viewed week than the week before, but not a bad week viewing overall. Now looking at our schedule here, we got the Panthers and the Stallions here on Saturday at 2 o'clock on ABC. So looking at these injury situations here for the Panthers, Marcus Sims did not play Week 10, but he is probable to play in this the USFL Championship game. Cole Hicatini was questionable last week. He didn't play last week. He's questionable this week. Bryce Perkins did go to the IR, so they're going to have to roll with Danny Etling. But EJ Perry is said to potentially be available as a QB2, but likely not going to be fully healthy to put in as the QB1. But if they needed him to be put in, they can do so. But yeah, I think they definitely would have had a better shot if Bryce Perkins was the starting quarterback, or if EJ Perry was the starting quarterback over Danny Etling. I think both those guys are better than Danny Etling. Bryce Perkins got injured last week. EJ Perry's been injured for a while and apparently isn't fully healthy yet. So rolling with Danny Etling here for this game, not ideal, but I think he's still a pretty solid quarterback and definitely could get it done here versus Birmingham if their running game can be really good and if their defense can be really good. Now for Birmingham, they don't really have a lot of injuries to worry about. The only thing was Larry Roundtree is questionable this week, but I mean they have plenty of other running backs with CJ Marable and Ricky Person anyway, so they're not really too worried about that. But yeah, I kind of would expect the Stallions to win this game, but I do think it'll be pretty close. Brahmas and Battlehawks here should be a very fun game. They don't have a lot of injuries, I don't think, for either team. Brahmas have a little bit. They have McFarland and John Lovett are both questionable for the running back. So Morgan Ellison was pretty good last week, but definitely would like to see McFarland and Lovett be able to play. And obviously the Chase Garbage injury is a concern. Right now he's listed as doubtful. He injured his wrist a while ago, came back, injured it last week as well, and is now listed as doubtful for this week. I do think if he's able to play, this could be a very, very close game. But if he's not playing, Quentin Dormity's set to play, I'm definitely going to be leaning St. Louis here this week. I do hope Chase Garbage is able to play. I think he's in one of the best quarterbacks this season. I think it'd be a very fun game if we get to see him versus A.J. McCarron, because we have not been able to see that. The first time they played each other, that's when Chase Garbage got hurt originally. They played each other last week, and Chase Garbage got hurt again. So we have not been able to see a full game of A.J. McCarron versus Chase Garbage, which I think would be a really, really good matchup. Here for St. Louis on their injuries, they only got to worry about Marcel Aitman, really. He did not play in Week 10, and he's now questionable here for the playoff game. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Stallions and Battlehawks here. That just makes the most sense. And then for that game, I don't really know who I'm gonna pick yet. I'm gonna make that prediction obviously next week. But that's gonna be it for the video. Thank you for watching. And make sure to check back at the end of the UFL season for a lot of extra content. Next week I'll do my championship game preview, but after that we're going to have a lot of other things like player rankings. We're going to do a breakdown of all the attendance and TV rating numbers, talk about potential expansion / relocation type stuff, and yeah, definitely do a lot of player rankings here and some predictions on UFL to NFL for 2024. But yeah, thank you for watching.